Thanks very much, folks, for coming down here tonight for Teenage Wasteland Live. This event is supported by him thanks to Westmeath Arts and Creative Ireland and Westmeath County Council.
We're ready to roll. Welcome, Terry.
Big round of applause for Terry McMahon. Have you ever been to Mullingar before, Terry?
No.
Is this your first time here?
I was born and bred in this kip.
Oh, no. What age were you when you left?
15.
15. So how long are you away from Mullingar now? Like, away from...
12 years.
12 years. 12 years. So you're 42.
I'm 41. 42 tomorrow.
You're looking well on it.
I know. I work hard.
So what have you done since you've left Mullingar?
Pined for a return. This is the return.
The green grasses of home, as Tom Jones said, but I'm here 21 years. You left Mullingar and I came here, but I remember being told about this actor who was in Batman, and I was going, what?
Jesus
From
Christ.
the town?
I can't believe that's how you opened this fucking conversation.
And Fair City,
That's
I was told about.
nonsense. Batman and Fair City is how you open it? It's like we're lovers and you go, do you remember the time you were a hooker and a whore and you give hand jobs in the jacks downstairs? What the fuck is wrong with you?
This was 21 years ago.
It doesn't fucking matter. It still hurts.
For a small town.
Jesus Christ.
So, did you enjoy Batman?
I did, yeah. I love them. What the fuck? I still get checks for it. That's all I'll say.
Good.
But Jesus Christ.
From Mullingar to a Hollywood movie, that is massive.
Not really, no.
I'm a massive Batman fan.
Well, your sex life is your own business.
So, Mick, let's edit all that out. Let's start again. Ladies and gentlemen, the film director, Terry McMahon. Big round of applause for Terry.
Don't edit any of that out. By the way, for the record, it's an honour to be in the same room as you people. Thank you very much for being here.
So, Terry, take us back to your teenage years in Mullingar. Like, when are we talking and what was it like?
It's bizarre because I don't know whether you know the concept of the show. It's a fucking brilliant concept. It's where you take 6 songs from your teenage years that are pivotal to you, personally to you. And it's a brilliant concept because it's not about the greatest songs. It's not about the monumental moments. It's about the tiny, embarrassing moments. We're sitting in a room where behind us, over our shoulder, for the international audience, my first intimate engagement with a woman. I knew that was a bad introduction to a conversation, particularly in Mullingar, where every introduction is usually a priest introducing himself to a child. But I for some reason, like, there's a guy in the room, his name is Michael Canirons, a beautiful, majestic, I used to babysit him as a kid. And that doesn't sound as lascivious as it sounds, but he was a beautiful soul, and I knew his brother very well. And for some reason, Michael, your brother had the keys to the building over our shoulder, which is the Mullingar Museum. At the time, it was the Mullingar Museum. And some fucking moron had the idea that I could be trusted with the keys. So they gave me the keys, and I would occasionally get kicked out of home for whatever reason, and I would come to that museum. And I'd open the museum and lock the door behind me, and there was a mannequin who wore this female dress. And I was so fucking lonely and so unaware of intimacy that I began to try to seduce this mannequin. And for some reason, she reciprocated. So that to me is Mullingar.
Are you still with her?
She doesn't put out as much as she used to, but yeah.
What age were you then, Terry?
Like 2 days ago.
Oh,
No, I was only a kid. I was literally 12 or 13, but it was that idea, because part of what makes this concept so remarkable is that you're returning to the embarrassment of the teenage years. And the stories I'm going to tell you tonight are fucking embarrassing. Like, there's no hero's journey here. By the end of this evening, you're going to go, this guy needs to see a psychiatrist. And then a fucking prison counsellor. So.
We'll be your therapist tonight. What gigs stick in your mind in your teenage years from 14 to 19? Or in Mullingar, 14, 15, when you were here?
I tell you, actually, because his brother is in the back row there, I can say that Joe Dolan, and it's amazing that when you're a child and you hear about this iconic character, we used to go to Dolan's Bar, and we went to Dolan's Bar from the age of 12, which actually is a fucking very questionable access to Dolan's Bar, but Joe Dolan would be there, and it's only retrospectively you understand the nature of a human being. But we didn't know who he was. We knew he was somebody who was perhaps famous, but we didn't even understand the idea of fame at the time. But our constant recollection was of his decency, his kindness, his willingness to engage. And we had never encountered a star before. So we thought that's how all stars were. And it's extraordinary to return to a town where there's a statue outside. I remember when Michael Jackson died, somebody put gloves on his hand, which was so anarchic. But my memory of experiencing a gig that transcended reality was this astonishing human being called Joe Dolan, who only retrospectively, when you listen to his music, you realize that he was our Tom Jones. He was transcendent on every level. And we were too young to understand it. But we did understand kindness, decency, and fucking beauty. And he was that man. So that to me was my first great gig.
Here, here. Wow.
So Johnny, we've done the podcast for so long, we never had U2, and our buses, 2 U2 tracks the one night.
Talk about killing the fucking surprise, Will. And by the way, I fucking hate that U2 was on this list, particularly with what they've become. I abhor the idea of accusing or including them in this list. But the reality is that maybe I'm sure some people in the room comprehend the effect that the Unforgettable Fire album had on our generation.
Yeah.
It's
very ambient and experimental, and they brought Eno in the fourth record.
I don't give a fuck about any of that shit. The fact is that it hit us on a visceral level that was profound, and it became the soundtrack to our lives.
I do give a fuck. You see, you're an actor. I'm a musician, Terry. So
I know.
That's the difference. I write songs. You make films. I'm sorry. So I'm obsessed. I'm a geek with stuff like this. You're not.
That's not to diminish. I love that that's your thing. But like we're having a fucking pint of Guinness here, and it's like somebody describing to you how remarkable the process of making a pint of Guinness is, and you say, "Shut the fuck up and drink."
Yeah, but I love Promenade. I was impressed with you with Promenade, like picking Promenade, because it's such a... no one's ever picked that song ever, of The Unforgettable Fire.
But again, and this is part of the problem in terms of retrospective memory and then, future analysis and blah, 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 and whatever the band would become. But
you were 14 going around the town with Promenade and your Walkman.
But this town and this place and this fucking world, most people have no idea of the effect that an album like The Unforgettable Fire had on us. Yeah. And it wasn't just that it was Irish, because we didn't understand those ideas at an intellectual level, but an Irish band became the most transcendent, the most provocative, the most remarkable idea imaginable. And this felt like our inarticulate fucking yearning had been given flight. And for some reason, every post-coital breath, every fucking moment that needed to be articulated, this bizarre song from U2. And I'm not a huge fan of their great big breakthrough songs, but their albums consist of occasionally tiny, tiny songs. And this is Promenade by U2.
What a setup that
Beautiful
is. Give
song.
it a spin there, Mick.
That's Promenade there, of the fourth U2 album, Terry, of The Unforgettable Fire. And I was reading up on the song, and it's supposed to be about the Martello Tower in Bray. Me being a music nerd and anorak, and this kind of crack though. But it's supposed to be, Bono bought that, and he'd go down and, to the snooker halls on the promenade there in Bray. But I heard a funny story from McGowan once, because McGowan was staying in the house, and McGowan would go like bollock naked in front of the window when the train would be going by, and that people had thought it was Bono naked. Did anyone hear that story before? So that's what that place is about, Promenade. Me being a music geek,
but again, what a brilliant subversion of the expectation of Bono, and what a testament to Shane McGowan. But I don't mean to be dismissive of you two. Their cultural contribution to our nation is incalculable and undeniable. And fuck everything else.
I remember going up to car boot sales in Enniskillen back in the day, and my dad buying us that tape. You know, when I was about, what age are you?
27.
27. I was I'd say about 8 then, like, you know. And anyway, that was the last song on side 1. And that blew me head off, how you can be Irish and artistic and not playing stuff like Big Tom. Do you get what I'm saying? And you're experimenting. And that's like Roxy Music and Talking Heads. You know, they're getting Brian Eno in there as a producer, and the lyrics are streams of, you know, consciousness. It's just beautiful lyrics, like, you know. I think it's a hidden gem. And when I was seeing your playlist, I went, fucking hell, you know your music.
No, but you know? Genuinely, it's not that I know my music, but it's occasionally you see an artist reach a level that we celebrate. Like Pride is on that album, and it's a staggering breakthrough song. But when you hear somebody emote to such a level that it becomes transcendent, I think that is one of the great performances of any artist I've ever heard.
And what other music was on your radar when you were a kid around that time?
Well, I grew up with Bob Dylan, but it was my father's music. So by necessity, a teenage boy has got to reject his father. But no, but that makes sense. But his choice of music was astonishing. But like, it's funny because even as we're discussing this, you asked earlier how difficult was it to pick these 6 fucking songs. The first song I ever bought was Time After Time, Cyndi Lauper. And Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper, I just turned 13. I think it was my 13th birthday. I bought it for her, so it's Teenage Wasteland. But when you hear Time After Time and you don't understand on an intellectual level what it is to yearn for something beyond comprehension, but it hits you on such a visceral level that you transcend the limitations of your age, that was the introduction to it. And then I became obsessed with Miles Davis, and then later you see Miles Davis covering Time After Time as a jazz standard. Even one of the songs not included, Kate Bush. I remember, my brother is here. My brother had a girlfriend, and his girlfriend asked me what should I buy him for his birthday. And I thought, fuck that cunt. Buy him Kate Bush, Hounds of Love. He'd love it. And she bought it for him, and he came home and says, she fucking bought me this shit. Fucked it across the room, and I could not listen to it enough. It blew my mind wide open. So the immediacy of music, and also the escapism. Again, I'm sure that all of your listeners from any parochial town or any big city, what makes music so profoundly transcendent is its ability to make us feel not just that we're not alone, but that we can transcend the inevitable reality of being alone.
And to connect, what cinema did you go to in the town? Is it, well, the cinema next to Wills?
Actually, because there was only one cinema in town. And they wanted to find a way to get rid of us. So they sent us to the cinema on a Sunday afternoon. Maybe you remember this. They sent us to the cinema on a Sunday afternoon. And for whatever reason, the program that had been advertised had changed. And there was supposed to be some kids' movie, but we went to see Kelly's Heroes.
Jesus, what a film.
Fuck, man. And I remember watching that movie going, holy fuck, I shouldn't be here, but I don't want to leave here.
But music and film, Purple Rain. Did you go see Purple Rain, or were you too young?
No, I saw Purple Rain, and I remember thinking Prince was I remember, it's funny because it's that thing where he's the androgyny, the complex sexuality, all those things. And then listening to the album, fuck. And it was my mother who bought the album. She was a massive Prince fan, and she went to see him live and all those things. I think the last thing she listened to before she died was Prince. This song, and it's funny because it's one of those songs where the opening stanza is, I knew this girl named Nikki. I guess you could say she was a sex fiend. I met her in a hotel lobby masturbating with a magazine. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a fucking very enticing opening to a song. But what's remarkable about the song is that it transcends the obvious sexual and becomes about pain and yearning and the introduction to the fucking staggering power of sex. And bizarrely, it's the same song that, who's your man who ran for the presidential election?
Al Gore. It tipped Tipper Gore over the edge, didn't it? It's the beginning of the stickers.
Al Gore's missus. Al Gore's missus decided that this was the time to introduce the fucking self-righteous
Parental advisory stickers, yeah.
parental advisory stickers. So an artist, and it's really interesting to see the effect down the line, that artists subscribe to it. And the first idea of woke culture, the first idea of that self-involved justification for censorship came into play, and it was directly as a consequence of Darling Nikki by the fucking genius that is Prince.
Give it a spin, Mick.
What a record, though. When Doves Cry, I Would Die For You, Terry. Let's Go Crazy, Take Me With You. Like, he's a genius. That's genius, isn't it?
He's a modern Mozart.
So, Terry, you're a kid and you're on the road to Dublin. You're hitching to Dublin.
What a perfect lead-in. So again, and listen, I don't know if this is any interest to anybody. It's fucking embarrassed by what I'm revealing here, but it's back to that thing of picking 6 tracks that fucking ripped your soul asunder. So I thumbed a lift to Dublin, and I got a job in the Spa Hotel, aptly named. And I remember trying to comprehend what the fuck you're supposed to be doing with your life and all that kind of horseshit, but at the same time, you're only trying to survive. And then I ended up in a flat, a bedsit in Grove Park in Rathmines. And I had hooked up with another girl, a beautiful girl, and this is, again, the theme. The theme of this is the songs that made emotional sense to you during the madness of a relationship, as if that has any fucking comprehension for any of us. But we had hooked up, and I got to this place in Grove Park, and I had broken up with her under the pretense of presuming that the breakup would be short-lived and we would have angry, aggressive, fucking forgiving sex, you know? As anybody would, any rational thought would think, but she was fucking far smarter than me, and she went, fuck this asshole. So I was in this fucking bedsit, and I was playing music and learning about music, and again, it's literally like a bad fucking novel, but I was reading Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment, and I had left school and I had lost out on all the academia and the qualifications and all that fucking wank that we give so much power to. But I thought that if I could play this song that ripped my heart out of my fucking body out the window, that somehow some woman, some beautiful woman would stop what she was doing. It's so fucking rapey. It's embarrassing. But
it's Rod Stewart, Do You Think I'm Sexy, isn't it?
No, it wasn't. No. It would have been probably a better choice. But a very good friend of mine, Jimmy Fay, he introduced me to the album Astral Weeks. And it's just like, you know, we talked about Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. There are certain works of art that transcend everything. But I thought that if I could play this fucking song out the window of this tiny little bedsit I was living in, that some woman might stop and recognize the lonely desperation in me and step right up like a ballerina and knock on the door and say, I'm here for you. Yeah. That's how fucking naive I was.
That's beautiful.
That's the fucking song.
You're a true romantic.
No, I'm a fucking psychopath.
But it's a healing song. It's good medicine, Van Morrison.
It's okay. Within the context of what we're discussing, for me, it's incredible that we exist in a time where the great rebels of our time, and I mean the great rebels like Shane MacGowan, like Van Morrison, and actually initially you too,
and Sinead,
of course, Sinead, but that the remarkable human beings in our time, when they were given the opportunity to shine, they saved our collective soul. They created works of art that transcended everything that we thought we were capable of and made us understand that we were transcendent.
And made Ireland sexy in song.
But not just sexy, but made us understand that we were perhaps astonishing. And then it came to a pharmaceutical industry defining the nature of intimacy, the nature of health, the nature of engagement, the nature of family, the nature of loneliness.
Yep.
And the only motherfucker who stepped up was Van Morrison. And he was killed for it. He was destroyed for it. One of the greatest artists in the history of our entire culture. He was killed for it. And did he give a fuck?
No.
But this is Ballerina.
Ballerina of Van Morrison's 1968 masterpiece, Astral Weeks. Is that the best Irish record ever? Best Irish album ever? Astral Weeks?
It's possible that, again, for the people in the room, and I envy you for the people in the room who don't know the album Astral Weeks. It was made over a few days by one of the greatest artists in the history of the world, not just the history of our culture. And it's amazing to see that artist be destroyed for questioning the national narrative predicated by pharmaceutical companies, corrupt governments, so on and so forth. And his defiance against it is the best part of who we are. And it's amazing that so few of us are willing to align ourselves with the idea of courage, but so many of us are willing to posthumously celebrate some great artist like Sinead O'Connor, while we wouldn't shit on her in reality if she stood in front of us. And that idea of recognizing that the great rebel artists of our culture are always 20 steps ahead of us.
Well, a prophet is never accepted in his hometown, but you're accepted in Mullingar, Terry.
Me bollocks. These people are sitting there going, who is this cunt talking this horseshit?
But hands up who has Astral Weeks here. That's good. That's good going. And you can buy Astral Weeks tomorrow in Dunn Stores in Mullingar. It's €25 and in vinyl. But what a song! That was. It was about Janet Planet. His missus. She was an actress. You don't give a shit about this stuff. But she was an actress, and he was imagining her in an opera house like a ballerina.
I care deeply about this stuff.
And it's taking you higher. It's taking you higher. So there's Ray Charles in there.
No, but just that Ray
James
Charles,
Brown.
of course. But just that idea of step right up.
Step right up.
Move on up. And ring the bell.
Ring the bell.
And that idea of loneliness, where loneliness can be counterbalanced by somebody having the courage to transcend the limitations of expectation. It's something we keep on forgetting about. And music at its finest is about the idea of transcending the limitations of fear, the limitations of intimacy, the limitations of doubt, and making something transcendent occur. If that's not what music is about, if that's not what cinema is about, if that's not what art is about, we're just a bunch of fucking liars and frauds and fucking...
Cinema Paradiso just came in my head, but you love 12 Young Angry Men, don't you? 12 Angry Men.
It's a
12 young...
a few angry men. Them angry men out there.
I've done my work on you. I've done my work. I've been watching an interview all week. I'm brainwashed by you.
I tell you what I'd say. And Peter Gilliran is in the room, and I don't mean to embarrass him here, but like I was a kid, and himself and Des Kane were also kids, but just like 1 or 2 years older. But they were such fucking anarchic, brilliantly individualistic individuals who wanted to find something transcendent. And again, just like Michael Canarion's here as a great filmmaker, like, and with respect, I've been touted as whatever, and based on Will's description, but the great filmmaker in our community, in our town, in our county is Michael Canarion's. And the great facilitator of art is Peter Gilliran. These are people who, they didn't do it for money or fame or any of that nonsense. They did it because their profound belief in transcendence was the thing that drove them across the board. And I was blessed to meet him and Des Kane, blessed as a young kid. So when we talk about art and Van Morrison and these transcendent people, it's not just their power to make something that hits you to the visceral core. It's our action as a consequence that transcends the limitations of the lies, the bullshit, the fucking dishonor, the fucking fallacies. And these people, these facilitators, these artists, people like Van Morrison are the most essential doctors in our fucked up system. Not pharmaceutical companies, but artists like Van Morrison.
I'll never get a job this time again.
I was wrong about that Canards cunt. But Peter Gitterin is something special.
What was the films of your youth? You know, of your teenage years? Like, what you did films like Jim Jarmusch? What directors are you like when you were younger?
Jim Jarmusch, you know, you're pretentious cunt. Yeah, me and Jim were like that.
No, but what directors?
But again, like I said it earlier, Kelly's Heroes.
Yeah.
Like fucking Kelly's Heroes. You look at look at the actors in that film. But the idea, it wasn't just about, and it's funny because it becomes a kind of pose, a kind of pretension. But the films that hit you in the fucking stomach, they were born out of idiosyncrasy, born out of an incomprehension as to why you were responding the way you were responding. They weren't determined by a marketing company or a long fucking bullshit, drawn out pimp and whore bullshit. It was to do with, what the fuck am I watching?
You love Jim Sheridan.
Jim Sheridan, look, I think we should genuflect at the mention of his name.
Big style.
No, but seriously, because we have, you know, in our culture, if ever there was an indication of what's wrong with our culture, what needs to be addressed in our culture, and now Jim Sheridan can't even fucking get the funding to make a movie. And somehow Jim is the cunt. Yeah. We're the cunts.
Yeah. But what a film, In the Name of the Father. Jesus, you like the Hendrix bit at the beginning.
Well, it's okay. I don't know how many people in the room have seen In the Name of the Father, but but within the context of a musical conversation, you have Daniel Day-Lewis who's playing Jerry Conlon, and the brilliance of that film is that they present him as a bit of a cunt. He's a fucking lowlife. They didn't present him as a hero. But he's on a rooftop and he's stealing whatever the fuck it is that they steal off rooftops. And he's playing the guitar with a mangled piece of metal, and he's going down, 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 down. And he's playing it like a cunt. And you're going, this guy's a cunt. And then the British troops shoot at him, and suddenly the actual Jimi Hendrix comes in. Down, 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 down. And suddenly you're going, this guy's a fucking hero. It took a half a second through music to turn him from being a cunt into a hero. That's the power of music.
A great Irish film. So that was an influence. Jim Sheridan would be an influence.
On all of us. On all of us.
On all.
Talk to us, Terry, about mid-80s then, Dublin. What were you doing? What was it like?
I was running a financial institution in Dublin in the mid-80s.
So you're
staggeringly successful.
You're a yuppie.
What's the next fucking song?
The next song
is
called
Don't ruin the surprise.
Pet Shop Boys, let's make lots of money.
I moved to Dublin. I hooked up with somebody else, and she was fabulous and wonderful and a complete fucking psychopath, which was the introduction to the rest of my life with women. But she was amazing, and she was a button pusher, and she had the ability to make me believe that reality was secondary to insanity. I'm sure you all fucking recognize it, both male and female, as we all sit here in silence. But so I had to jump ship, and I moved to England because I heard this bizarre fucking song that made horrible sense in terms of the capacity to turn love into rage and rage into fucking venom.
What's the name of the song?
I don't fucking know.
It's called I Want You, Terry McMahon.
I gave you the perfect introduction, and then you asked me the fucking name of it.
Elvis Costello.
It's called I Want You by Elvis Costello.
That's a great first dance for a wedding, isn't it, that song? I Want You, no?
Again, I don't know how many people in the room know the song, but it starts, like for the first third of the song, it starts as a love song. I want you, I love you, I adore you, you're magnificent. And then it gets a little bit ropey. And then it gets ropey as fuck. And suddenly you listen to it going, I can't believe some cunt out there knows how I'm feeling. And he's saying, I want you, I want to fuck you over, I want to hurt you, I want to do things to you that the soul can't even begin to comprehend. And he keeps on justifying it as love. And again, this is the teenage wasteland. This is, like later in life you learn to fucking wake up to reality. But to be a young man arriving in a realm where somebody articulates your fucking pain and your hurt, it's an astonishing power that music has. More than cinema, more than television, more than conversation, more than sex, more than all those things. They say that all art aspires toward the state of music. You think about the great songs, the great albums you've ever loved. You've listened to them 1,000 times. Think of the great movies you've ever loved. Have you watched them more than 3 times? The viscerality of music is astonishing, and this song, to me, for me, it was a Bukowski poem. It was a fucking work of art. It suddenly gave voice to how embarrassed you should be by your shameful rage. It didn't give flight to your rage or make you think that you were somehow justified. It made you recognize that you not just were not alone, but you're a bit of a cunt. Stop being a cunt. Start learning to love the light side of love rather than the dark side.
And he showed the deep, dark, truthful mirror. Elvis Costello said it's a pornographic snapshot. Lots of broken glass, a squashed box of chocolates, and a little bit of blood on the wall. Romantic.
Yeah, fuck Elvis Costello. I thought my description was better.
Yahoo! Declan Patrick McManus, another Irish, singer-songwriter, Irish Liverpool, London, singer-songwriter. Do you like any other Elvis Costello songs? A little bit lighter ones? No?
He did that extraordinary duet, God Only Knows.
Burt Bacharach, what a song.
Burt Bacharach before he died. And if you ever get the chance to listen to it, I highly recommend it. It's one of the great songs of modern times.
Can we talk about some of your films? The films.
Yeah.
So how did you make your first film, Charlie Casanova?
Are we talking about porn films? What films?
No, I mean the other ones, not the ones you showed me, the other ones.
They were supposed to be private. Okay. Again, I don't know how much anybody gives a fuck about this, but we'll talk about it just so we have some kind of clarity. But the first film I made was a film called Charlie Casanova. It was one of the most beloved Irish films ever made. Stop laughing, you cunts. It was loved. But we made it for next to nothing and all that kind of bullshit and all that kind of nonsense, and nobody gives a fuck about that. But eventually we got picked up by Studio Canal, and it was a distribution deal, and it was all wonderful. And then this was like 11 years ago, before we got into woke culture, or whatever phrase. I don't mean that in a reductive sense, but before we got into a realm where people were defined by having a capacity to question. Apparently those people are now the enemy. And the idea of making a film that questioned the status quo. We've made a film about the working class, about the idea of fallacy, lies becoming truth, scumbags exploiting our vulnerability. And at the time it was fucking hated, but it was picked up by Studio Canal, it was released in the cinemas, it was all that shit, and it was made for less than $1,000. But in the tiniest time frame, it went from being a kind of zero to hero project to being the worst fucking thing since Jimmy Savile. But you get to the point where you're going, what the fuck just happened? Like, how did this happen? And then you realize that we came on the cusp of a conversation, and the conversation was based on perception versus reality. And the whole film was about perception versus reality, or so we thought. But now we exist in a realm where, and then we made the second film, it was Patrick's Day, and that film was about the idea of perception versus reality. But now we exist in a different realm where you either acquiesce to the lie of woke culture, or you fuck off.
But I loved how you stood up to the critics.
I didn't.
I thought you stood up to the critics, yeah. And I thought that was very brave. Because it's easy to slag or troll, like Mark Twain, though them who can do, them who can't teach. But, where is a lot of these critics kind of novels and stuff? I thought you stood up to the man.
But again, with respect, again, we've a brilliant filmmaker. Stop, you cunt. Shut the fuck up, Canarns. This man made a masterpiece called A Fucking Sparrow. But the reality is that we get to a realm where it's not a case of standing up to the critics, because everybody is a critic. But
we need critics, because you can't have people licking your arse. I think you need slaggins too, or you haven't come out with a true piece of art.
But I think we need to question the idea of criticism.
Yep.
See, to critique something means to transcend the personal prejudice and understand and comprehend the idea of structure and form. That kind of criticism is sublime. But these fucking cowardly cunts are not critics.
No.
They're a bunch of fucking deadbeat scumbags who never made anything a day in their fucking lives, and they're passing judgment on every fucking scumbag who tried to make something, and they're being hailed and elevated and protected. They're not critics.
And you're a punk from Mullingar making a film for a grand. Do you know what I'm saying? That's pure art.
But again, like the geographical location is irrelevant. But the point is that you get to that realm where you understand that our idea of art used to be predicated on the notion of stimulating and provoking and transcending the limitations of reality.
Yep.
Now, if you do that, you're fucking dead.
Yep.
You have to acquiesce
Yep.
to an ideological idea based on a fucking retarded notion of intellectual conceptualization of the nature of reality. And if you don't acquiesce, you're dead. That's the fucking death of art. This is a great conversation, isn't it?
It is.
How fucking wonderful.
Let's have some soothing tunes from
Let's have some
punk.
fucking comedy.
Elvis, let's go.
Blue Moon by Elvis. That was released in 1956. What a song, produced by Sam Phillips of Elvis's debut record. And Jim Jarmusch's Mystery Train always comes in my head, or The Outsiders. And when did you first hear that song, Terry?
It's it's bizarre to be having this conversation in front of a live audience, but I moved to Cheltenham because this fucking magnificent woman, this button-pushing crazy bitch, fucking destroyed me. And
was it a horse or was it a... No, sorry. I'm terrible.
I wish it was. But it's one of those bizarre things where, because I'm trying to make some kind of connection or some kind, the need to, the formulaic need or whatever. But she was brilliant, like all these women, brilliant fucking women. I'm blessed to have met astonishing women, but she was a button pusher and she fucking destroyed me, and she was older than me and more experienced than me and all those things. And I moved to England, and I'd lived in Cheltenham, and I went into a bar, and I was so fucking broken and so embarrassed by how broken I was, because I had met two women who loved me unconditionally, and then I met a woman who was a fucking woman. And I moved to Cheltenham, and I went into a bar, and it was in Cheltenham, and it's like a bad scene in a bad horror movie. You walk in the door, and everybody stops what they're doing, and they all turn and look at you. And this was at a time when the IRA were planting bombs in Birmingham and multiple other places. So I'd just gotten a job. Someone had set up a job and blah, blah, blah. And I was still a teenager. And I was so fucking lonely and so heartbroken. And she had broken me in half that I normally I would have left the place and walked out of it. But when I walked in and everybody turned with such hostility, I just thought, you know what? I've been to lonelier places than these cunts. So I sat at the bar and I ordered a drink in an Irish accent. And instantly they all went, "Who's this cunt?" with total justification at the time. And then it was silence. And I didn't know what to do, so I went to the jukebox. And we had grown up on Elvis Presley. My father was a massive... Elvis and Bob Dylan were the two heroes with total justification. But I had never heard Elvis do Blue Moon before. And I just put the fucking money into the jukebox, press play, and strolled back to the bar. And all of them, like these are hardcore motherfuckers in Cheltenham. And all of them watched me, and they made no fucking deference to make it clear they were watching me. And I sat back down. And I'm a teenager. I'm a kid who's too lonely to leave the place. And then the opening bars of that song came in. And I swear to God, every single man in that place, their shoulders dropped. And their fucking heartbreak was so obvious. And I realized that I was part of a long line of broken men. But it was amazing because it sounds like a shit fucking dodgy scene in a movie, but I swear to God it's true. I sat at the bar and I was a kid and a guy sent over a drink. And today we go, he's gay, he's trying to fuck you, whatever. But he sent over a drink because he just thought, this kid is more fucked than me. So that's where fucking Blue Moon came from. And then years and years later, I listened to this song and I realized that the idea of being alone and being lonely and being fucked up is intergenerational, interracial, intersocioeconomic. And all the cunts who will try and exploit it know nothing about any of them. So this is Elvis, Blue Moon.
Woo! You're the real deal, Terry. I'm understanding your films even more now. That that it's true in all the films. But Blue Moon, did you ever hear the Marcel's version? It was like a doo-wop 1961 version, Terry. You like that one? But one of my favourite songs ever is The Killing Moon by Echo and the Bunnymen. And Ian McCullough sings...
Fuck off, man.
That
was on the list.
Blue Moon, I saw you.
I took it off the list.
So is Blue Moon the greatest song ever?
I shit you not. I swear to you, man, that was on the list. I took it off the list.
What a song.
Echo and the Bunnymen
as a teenage song. But I think that is the Blue Moon Ian McCullough's on about.
Yeah,
it's Under a Blue
is,
Moon.
yeah.
And it's an old song that's around since 1934. Believe it or not, that song. So Elvis recorded that in 1956, 21 years. Well, 22 years after. But Jesus.
But again, sorry, just for context, Elvis recorded this on his debut album called Elvis Presley 1976 at a time when people were saying that Elvis Presley was a fucking racial theft, blah, 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 who couldn't sing. And you listen to that recording, and a myriad of geniuses recorded that song. And I defy you to match anybody singing him.
Did you ever see Elvis when he played the Horizon Ballroom?
I did, yeah.
You did?
Me and Elvis were like that.
The night is calling, isn't it?
The night is calling.
The night is young, but we have a bottle of whiskey here. This is going to keep going for a while, isn't it?
That's not a fucking bottle.
We've one final choice, Terry. Nina Simone.
It's okay.
Talk to us about Nina Simone.
It's so it's bizarre because you're so fucking kind, all of you, and sitting in this fucking room in this town, you get to the point where you go, is this too much? Is this fucking whatever? So I'll try and.
It's like Oprah. It's intimate, isn't it tonight?
No, but also but it's actually a fair boring the arse of these poor guys.
Yes. On a Wednesday, nice crowd on a Wednesday.
So, but again, just to be clear, like it's a whatever nonsense people perceive, it's a fucking privilege to sit in your company. It's an honor to sit in your company. That's all the preface of it. So this is Nobody, and it's one of those things where you go, this is the time not to talk. This is the time not to explore that story. And that's the time where you have to fucking explore that story. So I was, I mentioned earlier about Ballerina, Van Morrison, playing Ballerina out the window where you hope that some woman is going to pass by and she's going to stop her whole life and knock on your door because she's so compelled by the yearning for love. Like a fucking moron. But I I tried to kill myself to the next song, but unlike some emotional fucking tears bullshit, I was too much of a moron to understand how to kill myself. So I decided that I would try to starve myself to death, being the genius that I am. And I had gotten a room in a small little place in Rathmines. And I decided that I could break into the box that would take 50p coins. And if I could put in enough 50p coins, which was just one coin, I could make enough to happen where the water would be warm enough for a few hours. And I got into the water, not having eaten in 10 days, convinced myself that I would fall asleep. And then I woke up in the water, freezing cold, and swallowing water, and I got out of the bath and collapsed. And then I woke up a few hours later. And I got to that point where you go, I don't know what life is anymore. I don't know what it means anymore. But I know that I'm afraid to die. And there was a girl living across from me in a little bedsit. I was living in a tiny little bedsit, and there was a girl living across from me. And it was the end of the teenage years. I was 19, and she was older. She was a doctor from Tiananmen Square. Tiananmen Square was this crazy shit that happened in China where a whole bunch of people were killed. And she was a refugee from Tiananmen Square, but she was a doctor. And we lived, our windows faced each other, and just like ballerina Van Morrison, I thought that maybe, and she touched her ear across, and she wanted to know what the song was. And we didn't know English, we didn't know anything. And I didn't know how to communicate with her. And then I went downstairs, and I tried to kill myself and failed miserably. I came back up again, and she was still at the window pointing to her ear. So I brought her down the tape, and I handed her the tape. And the next day she was making food, and she kept on, I was watching her through our windows. She was making food, and she made something extraordinary, and then she invited me over. And we became lovers. And it was like some kind of absurd Van Morrison scenario. And Ballerina became Nina Simone, became Nobody. And the lyrics to Nina Simone, Nobody, is, I don't intend to do nothing for nobody unless somebody does something for me. And this fucking Chinese doctor from Tiananmen Square saved my fucking life.
God bless her. Beautiful. So redemption and love in your films. Like, we can see it, how you connect, and you're honest. What comes from the heart goes to the heart. You've been very honest with us tonight, and I feel you're very honest in your films. You don't hold anything back. You're not scared of any critics. You're not scared of any Irish Film Board. And we see that you're very brave. I sound like fucking Gabriel Byrne in treatment here. I'll shut the fuck up. You know?
Yet again, I give you that fucking introduction. And you have to.
I fucked it up again. But I've watched Patrick's Day twice this week. And has anyone seen Patrick's Day? It's on YouTube. What a film. Big round of applause for Terry.
Let's roll some Nina. Top man, great playlist.